everybody, and welcome to Epic Everyday, our weekday podcast for busy, overwhelmed Christians who want to stop being busy and overwhelmed and move into freedom and abundance and peace. I'm Liz Ferricks, and this is my husband, Evan.
Hello.
And we are so glad that you guys are here with us on this lovely Monday.
That's right. I was waiting for you to say it. We need a Monday sound effect. What would be a good one? Tweet us in.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to have a little something on our favorite day of the week.
As you guys know, we work our way through the CSCS. They're an adaptation of Peter Ralston's Tai Chi principles, and they are being calm, surrendered, centered, connected, and complete. And we're very passionate about them because we found that they really are the pathway to getting out of overwhelm and busyness and into that actually having peace and enoughness and freedom in the middle of it. This week, we are going to spend the whole week talking about being complete.
This is the last CSC, the bow on the package.
First, we should define complete.
Okay. You want me to do it?
Well,
Complete. Let's see. Layman's definition. That'll be my job on the show. I'll do layman's definitions.
Okay.
Complete is when you're fully engaged with your relationship with God. You understand who you are and where you fit into the world around you, and you don't deny parts of yourself you don't like, and you don't make up parts of yourself that aren't there to kind of act and put on a show. For physically, it means all of your body is engaged in the task, right? So you're not just, lifting a dumbbell or something with your arm and working just a few muscles. Your whole body is lifting the thing or moving the thing or walking or whatever.
Right.
You're not just, when you walk, it's not just your feet.
Yes.
So, does that?
And in addition to all that, you're also engaged with everything that's going on around you. And it's really easy for us to be so forward focused that we don't even realize if somebody walks up behind us.
Yeah, or peripheral vision or something. Sure.
Right.
Yeah, aware of your surroundings, plugged in.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
All right. So barriers to that. Today we are going to talk about compartmentalization.
Yeah. And the way that this steals your peace or contributes to overwhelm is, well, there's a number of ways, but the big one I thought of was, because I'm guilty of this, being different depending on the environment, right? Being smart guy at work, and maybe, whether you're at school or work or church or whatever, like if you're kind of retooling yourself for each of those situations, that's a compartmentalization, and it's not really, you're not being complete. It's not you.
Definitely. It's a juggling act that you cannot win.
Yeah. And, well, anyway, I don't want to get ahead of myself. One of the problems with that is maybe obvious, but it takes a fair amount of work, fair amount of stress. Yes. It causes stress to put on the show everywhere you go. And then if one of the, just hypothetical, like if one of the places that you're not acting, say, is if you're at home with your family, and then maybe that means you take out your anger on your family or something. And so then the compound just pressure of like performing at work and being like, because I don't know how many stories I've heard where somebody, just somebody they knew or somebody's dad or somebody's grandpa was like at church, everybody's like, hey man, you're like everybody's best friend. And then at home, it's just like verbal abuse or physical abuse or whatever. And nobody knows about it except for the family. And everybody's so good at keeping it a secret. And so some of the contributors to that much rage at home could be the stress of all the acting that you do out there. Right.
Yeah, because it makes you feel so out of control because you're not being yourself and you know it. I mean, I remember when we were, one of the churches that we had attended before our current church, I had gotten so used to being in these churches that were very anti-outspoken women that, I don't know if you remember this, but I went through a period where it was like, people would ask a question and I'd just look at you and let you answer it.
Yeah.
And I remember taking this personality test at that church and realizing that they wouldn't even recognize the person that the personality test came out,
Oh, yeah, if they saw your answers.
Right, yeah, you were supposed to turn it back in so that they could, like, match you up with the right
Like, that's
ministry and
Liz?
stuff.
What?
You're like,
I
what the
never
heck?
saw that.
Right. Yeah.
So you were just putting so much energy into this front that you thought would be more acceptable to everybody, I
Right.
guess.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think it goes along with that people pleasing, wanting everyone to like you. I was actually thinking about, in Aesop's fables, his story, I think it's called The Man, His Son, and the Donkey. The Man, the Boy, and the Donkey. And basically the story is that this guy and his son are going to the market with a donkey, and someone passes them and says, "What is a donkey for except for riding?" And so the man puts the boy on the donkey, and they keep going along. And then they pass these other people, and they say, "See that lazy youngster? He lets his father walk while he rides." And so the man's like, "Get off the donkey."
Okay.
So then the boy's walking, and the man's on the donkey, and then there are two women that they pass, and the women go, "Shame on that lazy lout to let his poor little son trudge along." And so then they're like, "Oh, well, let's put both of us on the donkey," because they're thinking, all right, we'll please everyone this way. And so they come into the town, and everybody's making fun of them. And the men say, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself for overloading that poor donkey of yours with your hulking son?" And so, so they're like, "Oh man, what are we going to do?" So they get off the donkey and they think about it for a little bit. And so finally they cut down a pole, tie the donkey's feet to it, and then they start carrying the donkey into the town.
Oh.
And everybody, of course, is laughing at them like crazy. They get to the market bridge, and the donkey manages to get 1 foot loose, kicks the boy, who then drops the pole, and then the donkey falls into the river. And of course, because...
This was back when all stories had happy endings.
Yes, and of course, because the rest of his feet are tied, he drowns.
Gone. Yeah.
And then there's an old man that's been watching this whole thing, following behind them, and he says, "That will teach you. Please all, and you will please none."
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we get into. We're like, "Oh, I'll be super outgoing person here, and that'll make everybody happy." And then somebody's unhappy with it. Or I'll be super quiet person, and that'll make everybody happy. And somebody doesn't like it.
Well, and sometimes the somebody is me, is the you. I mean, the real place where, we're talking about we're talking about ourselves being complete. And then the bigger picture is, if we're not complete, we can't fit into the body of Christ the way we're supposed to.
Yeah, I know I was miserable when I was at that church, and I felt like I couldn't be involved in any ministry opportunities, and I don't know, I just felt like my soul was getting sucked to death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you think of, making all these different compartments, kind of be like, here's the business guy, here's home guy, but there's all this disunity because nobody's the real you, nobody's the real me, and so that, of course, is going to steal peace, because there's no one solid, one idea of who I am.
Right, and you're constantly having to suppress different parts of yourself, whether it's emotional. That's something that I struggle with. When I'm stressed and I go out to hang out with people, I tend to just be like, all right, just keep it cool, You
don't want to let them see
I'm not going to let them
emotions.
See that I'm falling apart.
Sure.
Like, no, really, I'm not in so much pain that I want to throw up right now. Really.
Well, sure. It's because that's maybe weakness or a burden to them, or who knows why, right?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of both of those, but
yeah.
But yeah, so as we're talking about all these different ways to be incomplete, what's the solution?
Well, the solution would be to accept myself a little bit. That's part of it, right? To accept those parts that I've been kind of locking up and hiding from everybody around me. There's probably a multifaceted answer. What do you want? What are you getting at?
Well, I think there's a few things. Like you were saying, accepting who you are, the good parts and the bad parts. Because only when you accept the bad parts of yourself can they start to change and to grow.
Yeah, locking them away it isn't changing them at all. They're still there. They're just
Right.
locked up in a closet or something in your heart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you actually stay more stuck there.
Yeah, because they're kind of enshrined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then also the Galatians 1:10 where it talks about seeking God's approval first. I feel like that's really the answer. Because if we have God's approval, we're not trying to please everybody. If we're just trying to please God,
Yeah.
his standards never change.
And yeah, his standards for coming are a heart of confession. I mean, it's
Well, and even just, the compartmentalization thing, he wants us to be our whole selves. So there's
right.
never a like, oh, for God, I really need to work on toning down,
Yeah.
or I need to work on being more energetic than I feel, or like he
Yeah,
just
there's none of
wants
that.
ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you don't get stuck in the donkey land where you're like, now I'm gonna ride on the donkey.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm gonna carry the
Yeah.
donkey.
Then you end up with a dead donkey. And how are you going to get back to your village?
Exactly.
Both people are walking then. I think another way to get back into unity is to, for me anyway, it was to realize the value in all of the feelings, not just the good ones.
Yeah.
Because my method of compartmentalizing, I wasn't really like a different person everywhere I went. I was the same, but I was the same fake person everywhere. So I was like same, and it was this steady state, never get angry, never get sad kind of guy.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so then it was just like, well, let's just act everywhere then. And I'm, because I'm scared of anger and sadness mostly, and so let's just not have those things.
Yeah.
So realizing the value in that, and that's a process, but there's a number of ways to do that. I've talked about some of them on the show, but yeah, support groups or counseling or even just trying to accept them and
Right.
learning how to process emotions because they're never supposed to camp. So the more I was like, I don't get angry or sad, that, well, like we were just talking about, that kind of enshrined them and they're here to stay
Right,
now. So I'm
yeah.
always angry and sad. Ironically, so
Right, yeah. Emotions process through by feeling them, not by ignoring them.
that's right.
The more you ignore them, the more they hang around forever.
Yeah. So that was tricky. That was tough.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you're in a place where you've been compartmentalizing for a long time and you're not even sure, are you work guy? Are you home guy? Like who are you? You kind of have to ask God to give you a clear vision of that. And then also, go back to something like we've talked about Carol Tuttle's personality types before. And I love that because hers are based off of your facial features and your unconscious habits.
Yeah.
Which to me,
things that are kind of you'd think are hardwired in.
Right. I think especially if you have had trauma in your life as someone who has PTSD, it's easy to have some of those personality traits trained out of you.
Sure, yeah.
And so being able to go back to either this is what I was like when I was very young, or if the trauma happened so early that you don't even remember it, having something like her system where you go, wait a minute. Oh, that's my personality type. Look, see, that's the way I keep my space,
Sure, yeah.
Recognizing, oh, I put
More
things in piles. I'm a type
things.
2.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and then allowing God to walk with you in that process, or walking with God, really, of knitting those disjointed things back together, or getting that stuff out of, emotional jail or whatever, and
Right.
and there may be a backlog of like with trauma, or even if you've just been like me, kind of locking it away. There's going to be a backlog of stuff to process. All the
Right.
anger and sadness that you didn't want to deal with before.
Yes.
And it's a scary thing to think about, but
Right.
that's how we're going to knit ourselves back together into one complete person.
Yeah, and it doesn't last forever.
No.
I mean, it feels like it's going to last forever when you're in the middle of it, but eventually you get through it.
And you can't do it alone, like we talked about last week. You
Right.
need your God, and you need your peeps.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what's one area you're compartmentalized in? And what are you going to do at it? 1% improvement. I hope that you guys have an awesome Monday, that you can look at it as opportunity day rather than going back to work and blah, blah, all that stuff.
Thank you for listening to the show and for sharing the show with your friends and other people that may benefit from listening to the show. That's why we're doing it, so the body of believers can engage in some of these things that we tend to ignore, unfortunately, the CSCs and their implications.
Yeah, we all need daily reminders of those things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they just go to the wayside.
We do. I mean, that's half the reason we're doing this show, so that we can have a venue to get this stuff in our forefront, and we're enjoying it quite a bit. So
yes, we love you guys, and we are praying for you. If you want to get a hold of us, you can always, look in the description. We're on Twitter. We have a Facebook group. We'd love to hear any suggestions you guys have for topics or anything you want to talk about. Come back tomorrow when we talk about addiction.
And how that steals our peace and makes us incomplete.
All right, we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.